Greetings, one and all. Welcome back to Beyond the Compass, the podcast where the worlds of digital nomads and paranormal investigators meet at the crossroads. I am Eric Garcia, your host, and today I am pleased to introduce today's guest. I'm going to try and not geek out because I am such a fan of this man's work. Ralph Sarchie is a 20-year veteran of the New York City Police Department, retiring as sergeant. From 2007 to 2008, he was an international police advisor in Iraq, training Iraqi police officers. But it was the chance discovery of a book titled Satan's Harvest, written by Ed and Lorraine Warren, that would eventually set him on a path walking the beat between two very different worlds, law enforcement and the supernatural. A devout Catholic and inspired by their book, he reached out to the Warrens and would eventually join them in the work, investigating cases of demonic possession and assisting in exorcisms of humanity's most ancient enemies. In 2001, he wrote a best-selling book titled Beware the Night, later re-released under Deliver Us from Evil. Now, that book detailed many of his paranormal investigations and would eventually become the basis for the 2014 feature film Deliver Us from Evil, starring Eric Bana. In 2015, Sarchie hosted the Destination America TV show The Demon Files, but left the series after only 3 episodes due to excessive restrictions placed upon him by the production company. In 2016, he was featured in a documentary film called Hostage to the Devil, which detailed the life of Father Malachi Martin, his longtime friend and mentor. These days, you'll find Ralph Sarchie living a quiet life in Florida, occasionally stepping back into his old life, back into the work when the need arises, often in an advisory capacity. Ralph Sarchie, welcome to the show, sir. It is an honor.
Eric, thanks for having me. That was some introduction there, I gotta say.
Thank you. I tried to do my research.
Yeah, you did.
Now, obviously, you're known for your work with the Warrens and your book and the subsequent film that was based off of it. But starting out, you were more of a UFO buff, weren't you?
Well, when I first started to look into strange phenomenon, I was attracted to the UFOlogy, so I started reading about that when I was about 11, 12 years old. And that sort of led me into the spirit realm of human spirits and demonic spirits.
Okay.
So I abandoned the UFOlogy and stuck with the demonology.
Well, it seemed to work for you. Do you still follow the occasional UFO-related news stories these days?
Oh yeah, I look at them. I had a guest here a couple of weeks ago who wrote a book on UFOlogy. We discussed things. I'm more of the camp where I believe that the aliens and alien phenomenon is basically a demonic deception. I haven't
Really?
seen anything to support the fact that they're from another planet or another solar system or wherever. With Einstein's theory of relativity, I don't see it being possible for a physical creature to be subjected to that type of hostile environment that space is. The fact of just the speed of travel would be something that I don't think any living organism could survive. So without going into all of that, I really do. The evidence that I've seen supports it being more of a demonic manifestation. I look at the supposed UFOs and I see spirit energy on a larger scale than what I'm normally used to seeing.
And so would that tie in with the abductions? Because when you talk UFOs, the topic of abductions and people never being seen again automatically goes along with it. So would you feel that's tied in with it as well, the abductions? And if so, where would they abduct them to?
Well, the cases that are not hoaxes, and it's very easy to prepare this as a hoax, we're relying on what you're telling us. There is no physical evidence to it. The way I see it, the descriptions would be more of a diabolical more of a diabolical nature than a nature of just being interested in some other species. There are ways of finding out about another species without doing the things that some of these people claim, are being done to them. But like I said earlier, and you alluded to this is really not my area of expertise.
Right.
I just have a very rudimentary understanding, or not understanding, but research into it, because I know that researching it any further is going to basically, be a waste of time.
Yeah, that's quite a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
The one aspect of it, and then we can move on to your specialty. But the one aspect of the UFO ology that's kind of piqued my interest. Are you familiar with the 37th parallel theory?
No.
Well, the global line of latitude, that's 37 degrees north of the equator and stretches around the globe. All along this line, it's been called both the UFO highway and the paranormal highway. And basically, from coast to coast, from my research, the line on this map is littered with histories of cattle mutilations, reports of underground military bases, UFO sightings, and ancient Native American sites. And it stretches basically between the 36th and 38th parallel, about 150 miles wide altogether. And there's just, not only in this country, but on other sides of the world along this line, there have been massive reports of UFO sightings, earthquakes, disasters at nuclear facilities, and so on. I just found, even Roswell, New Mexico, is about 100 miles south of 37th parallel. So if that was a crash, that was the only aspect of the UFOlogy that, again, I'm more the paranormal guy. I'm more the urban legends and along these lines and the work you
Mhm.
do. This is really not my special. I noticed that from my research, you were kind of a buff. You read into it a little bit, so I thought I'd start from there, just something a little bit different.
Yeah, but very little. Like I said.
Okay, okay. So now let's get into your
Well,
specialty.
you know what? If
Hmm.
if you don't mind, I want to go back because you seem to know. You have more information about this,
The parallel.
37 parallel. Yeah. Now,
Y-
has there ever been any scientific investigation into that area?
There is
They
a
take
book.
measurements,
Uh,
environmental measurements, anything like that?
there is a book. I actually have it somewhere on my shelf over here. There is a book actually titled "The 37th Parallel" by a man, written by a gentleman named Ben Mesrick, and he wrote that with another gentleman named Chuck Zukowski. Now, Chuck Zukowski is in the UFO community, and as far as the researchers, and one of the guys to get out there to say, "Hey, this is really happening." Chuck Zukowski is one of the better known, more respected names in that group. And he is actually a former microchip engineer and volunteer sheriff's deputy from the state of Colorado. And he actually lost his position. Chuck Zukowski did. He actually lost his position with the sheriff's department because he was looking so much into this, because he would take his family on his days off and go to all these reported sites and just bug government officials. And it got to the point
Okay.
where they released him from the department because of his work looking into the
Wow.
UFOs. So
Yeah.
that book is called The 37th Parallel by Ben Mesrick. And some of the other things, because on either side of it, they call that the phenomenon zone, where all these unusual things happen. But here's something also that's interesting. Along this line, just in this country, there are certain landmarks. You have the Pentagon, Fort Knox, the Los Alamos testing site in New Mexico. As I said, Roswell, New Mexico is about 100 miles south of it. You have the Four Corners area where Colorado, Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico meet. This part of the country is very sacred to the Navajo Indians. Uh, Nevada's Area 51, and outside of the United States, as I mentioned earlier, the north side of it passes through Granada, Spain, where they had several documented UFO sightings back in 1976, as well as passing through Fukushima, Japan, where the site of the 2011 earthquake and nuclear disaster. And the most interesting one, this 37th parallel passes through the border between North and South Korea. So
Okay,
there's
but
been,
what I'm looking for more is environmental. Did they find that there might be a higher amount of electromagnetic energy in the area, maybe some type of underground activity, these things that conduct electricity could certainly be the reason why you would have a higher sighting within these areas due to that electromagnetic energy. Even though the demonic don't need it or, to manifest themselves, they'll utilize it and they're sort of attracted to it
Really?
for whatever reason. So, well, it goes back to even the human spirit phenomenon that um, back in the day, before we become more sophisticated, you would see like when they would describe a haunting, it would be on a rainy, stormy night with a lot of a lot of thunder and lightning and all that stuff, which of course creates more electromagnetic energy in the air, static. And human spirits, they definitely need that type of help from the environment to manifest themselves. The demonic don't need that. They'll use it if it's available to them, but they don't have to. They don't have to interact or take anything from the natural order God instituted in order to affect the natural order that God created for us. They're outside of it, actually. So they don't need anything from it to manifest. But they seem to be highly active in these areas when you have overabundance of this electromagnetic energy in the air.
You
And
know,
that's why I
I
asked, because I'm looking for the correlation between. Because I actually saw what I believe to be a UFO twice in my life. Once I was working, I was a cop. Um, Something was way up there, and I asked my partner, "What is that?" He goes, "It's a plane," but it stopped and went back the other way. And he's like, "Nah, that ain't a plane." And actually, the last time I saw one, I was coming. It was about maybe 2 or 3 years ago. Coming home, a Christmas Day in the evening from Tampa, and I'm driving, and I had my cousin in the back seat. We were talking, and my girl was looking up in the sky. She says, "Oh, look at that! That's a UFO." And I'm like, "That's an airplane. That's not a UFO." And we're driving, and it in fact was a plane. But maybe I'd have to say a few minutes later, I actually did see something in the air from the right to the left, stop, and then go back the same exact way I witnessed it the first time. Except this time, it didn't look like it could be like an airplane. The first time, it could have been, except for the height and the abrupt change of direction. It could no longer be an aircraft, as far as I'm concerned, a physical aircraft. But that other one appeared to be what I've seen and know as spirit energy. So I look at it as a manifestation. We're going to be seeing more of that. You're going to be seeing a lot of things happening up in the sky.
Yeah, I think the government in the last couple of years being more forward with UFO events that they themselves have documented and coming out little by little. It's
I
like
don't
they're
trust the
almost
government.
preparing the public.
Yeah, I
Uh,
don't trust the government. No.
yeah, and there's two of us.
Listen, there are things that the government has been involved in um, that really weren't good, and it put a lot of people in danger. You know, I can't go deep into it just now because in about a year, hopefully, there's going to be a book coming out about Father Malachi Martin, and he's been involved in some incredible things. And one of the stories in the book is he related to me directly. There was a female soldier that was actually became possessed due to a program that the United States government was involved in, and he was called in there to consult. Now, I have another friend of mine who was present at the time, who is a retired CIA agent that was present, on that airbase that Father Martin was told to look into, to consult in. And in fact, there was a soldier. He described things to me about what he witnessed being done, and I'm not going to go into it. I'll save that for later. Let Rob explain it in the book in the proper manner.
So
But
are
they're
you
involved in some things.
so are you co-writing this book with him? Are you participating in
No,
it?
no, Rob is writing the book himself. So I know some of the material that's going to be in the book.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the material that he's writing about Father Martin discussed with me, and there are things that I'd never heard before. So I'm looking forward to this book because it usually fills in little puzzle pieces,
You know,
of the things that Father Martin had told me and the things that I had learned over the years uh, that I can somehow put together. It gives me more of a broader picture of the things that are going on, or the things that Father Martin had told me to look out for.
so he was on a military base when they called him. They called him in.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He was on the military base more than once for different reasons. A lot of these stories about Father Martin are going to be accompanied by photographic or documentary evidence.
You
He's not
know what
just
that
throw it out. There's going to be some evidence to back it up.
I'm looking forward to that. You know what that reminded me of, and actually now that I think about it, expanding on it, are you familiar with the movie that came out about 10, 12 years ago called The Men Who Stare at Goats?
Yeah, yeah. That was basically a comedy with George Clooney and
Right.
yeah,
But
all my favorite actors.
yeah, and Jeff
Sarcasm.
Bridges. Jeff Bridges. What
Yeah,
that was actually based on a true story. The United States Army had a program. The name of the program escapes me, but they mention it in the film, and because the film was based on a book, an
it was
actual.
on the Presidio. Is that what you're referring to? The Presidio?
No, the Presidio, I believe, was in San Francisco. This
Okay,
one was somewhere like
so
in the
something
desert.
different.
Yeah, but the book itself also was called The Men Who Stare at Goats. And the whole program was set up basically what they called psychic soldiers. And
Yeah,
these were soldiers who had an aptitude for what they call remote viewing.
remote viewing.
And they would be able to uh, look into the mind of someone else anywhere in the world. And they would use these guys to spy on Soviet Union and wherever else they needed them to
Yeah,
spy on. Now, the military, the government, they call this process remote viewing. Okay. Others within the paranormal community would call it like channeling or
astral
astral
projection.
projection.
Yeah.
And now that you bring in Father Martin, uh, you know, maybe taking a step here, could it be that someone was possibly remote viewing, and by doing this, they, maybe encountered the demonic?
Well, that wasn't in this particular program that I've referred to. This was deliberate. This was the goal,
Oh wow!
um, and they succeeded. And she was actually there was an exorcism performed, and she was freed. But that's about all I'm willing to go into that.
Right.
I'm
Okay.
going to let Rob describe that in greater detail. I couldn't do it the justice that it deserves, but it was something very interesting because Father Martin had told me this back in the 90s, the early 90s, and it wasn't until way later on that I actually met Rob. And a lot of the things that Rob discussed, I discussed directly with Father Martin. This was one of them. This was a really profound a situation because it shows you that the government, they believe in this stuff. It's not like the government is atheistic about God and the angels and the demons and things of prophecy, the book of Revelations.
Hmm.
They all know these things. Satanists, they believe They know who God is. They believe in God. They don't like him. They hate him, but they still believe in him. You can't hate something that you don't believe in. I mean, unless there's something wrong with you up in the head.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I've talked to many Satanists over the years. So, and very respectful people. I wouldn't have it any other way. And they told me what they felt, what their truth is. Obviously, like I said, they believe in God. They just don't want to serve him for some reason. But neither did Lucifer.
Yeah, and this I was actually going to save this question for later on, but it kind of it jives with what I was going to ask you. So I'll just ask you this now. So now I'm not into rap music or hip hop, but recently I came across a story about a subgenre of hip hop music called occult rappers. Now, unlike what they call the satanic panic of the 70s and 80s, which a lot of it could be left up to interpretation, unlike that, these guys, they make no bones about it. They're very open about their they're relying on devil worship. It's in the lyrics of their music. It's in their music videos. They're very blatant about it. They get tattoos and piercings related to it on their necks and foreheads. I mean, it's blatant. Now, they've essentially made it their brand, you could say, so to speak. And it reminded me of one point that you made in your book that really stood out to me, and that was the devil doesn't take care of his own. And what would you say to their audience? Because they're trying to influence so many young people. What would you say to their audience that they're trying to bring in?
Well, if you look at the soul, because that's really what this whole thing is all about, is the soul. A lot of people, they say, well, I'm a body that has a soul, and it's the other way around. You're a soul that has a body. Your true essence is not this physical body. So when it dies, the soul, the consciousness still goes on. Now, there are two functions of the soul: intellect and free will. While we're alive, we can exercise free will. Our intellect is gathered and formed by the data we collect through our five senses, which is also the way we sin, using our five senses. So when we have a memory, it comprises of our intellect. So we cut it down. The two functions is intellect and free will. When you take your last breath, the moment you take your last breath, you can no longer exercise free will. That is one function of the soul that goes. The only thing that's left is your intellect, your memory. When Jesus casts a soul to hell, this soul becomes the property of the devil, and the demons will be present to create as much torment and difficulty for you in the fact that they're going to take control over your intellect and your memory. So if you have any memories that are disturbing to you through your whole entire life, well, the state of hell is going to be, that memory is going to be prevalent upon you for all eternity, because the demonic are going to utilize whatever it is that will bring the maximum amount of suffering to your soul. Now, Archbishop Fulton Sheen had gone so far as to say that the state of the soul in hell is a state of perfect mental illness. Now, one of the things that I believe a lot of Satanists have a misconception about hell is that it's going to be a continuation of their life here on earth. But it is nothing like that at all. There's nothing like life on earth. Once you leave this world, you will never have anything like it again, because you're no longer physical. You'll always be a spiritual being at that point. In hell, there is no camaraderie. There is no hope. There is no love. There's no joy. There's no laughter. Everything is a blaspheme. It's a hatred against God. That is the number one thing down in hell, is the blasphemous rejection of God. And that's what it is. You've rejected God in order to end in hell. God didn't reject us. We reject him through our free will and our willingness to commit sin and not align our wills with his will. So the only place for us to go when we haven't done that is to hell. It's not going to be one big continuous party like you're having here on this earth. You're not going to be in the pub for all eternity, swilling down beers and shooting darts and shooting pool. It's a totally different ball game. It's all about suffering, and that's all it is, and despair.
Wow.
That's some of it.
Yeah, because I mean, when you the like I said, and there's also in the hip hop music. I mean, there are also Fortunately, there are hip hop artists who oppose these occult rappers quite openly in their own social media. I mean, they come around and say, "Hey, look, what you're doing is wrong. You guys need to get with God." So at least within that genre of music, there's still some opponents of it. Like, look, we're all cool gangster rappers,
there
but
always will be. There always will be.
okay, now. You made a distinction to describe yourself as a religious demonologist. I was under the impression that all demonologists are just that, but are there different variations?
Well, in this day and age, anybody who reads about 2 or 3 books now becomes a demonologist.
You're an
And they
expert.
might not ascribe to a religion. I hear of some demonologists out there that recommend that you burn sage in a home that you suspect of, experiencing diabolical activity. Take that sage. You can season your turkey with it, because that's about all that's good for. You burn sage in your house in a direct challenge to a demonic spirit, it's not going to go too well for you. There isn't anything there that's a buffer between you and that demon or demons, whatever you're dealing with. A religious demonologist is going to tell you that the only thing that you should be burning in that house is frankincense and myrrh that was properly blessed by a Catholic priest. Then it has an efficacious vibration to it. If that blessing isn't connected to it, all it is perfuming the environment. There is no spiritual ramifications to it at all. It needs to be blessed. Now, the church could have said, all right, we're going to use sage and burn sage. But we don't, because specifically frankincense and myrrh is biblical. It's what the Magi brought to Jesus Christ when he was born in the manger. They brought him frankincense and myrrh. And the Catholic Church uses the incense as a way to deliver our prayers up to heaven, because the
I was going to ask
altars
you
in
about that.
heaven are incensed with incense. So we will utilize those things specifically to create the negative vibrations against the demonic. And the lower level ones, they usually can't stand it for too long. They usually flee. Just that the burning of the incense, and these people are giving advice that is dangerous to do. People get physically assaulted in cases of demonic infestation and oppression and possession. There are a lot of physical assaults. So what you're doing is you're challenging something that is very, very willing to to hurt you physically is very, very willing to kill you as long as they can get your soul as the prize in the end. They're not nice.
And they are eternally patient. I've talked to several people about that before, especially when the topic of Ouija boards come up. I mean, like a lot of kids, I mean, in our family, we like messed around with it when we were kids, but you're kids and you really don't understand what you're doing. Now, if I had known then what I know now, I wouldn't have touched them. I mean, I'm on the
I
fence
played
about
with
it.
one too. I gotta admit it. I'll be honest. I'll confess. I had one. I played with it. I was into all of this stuff. I didn't know any better. So, my intention was not to commit a sinful act against God because I was ignorant of the fact. And one of the things you need in order to sin is you need to know it's a sin. But I left myself open to danger, And when you said that they have all eternity, yeah, there's no time frame in the spirit world. And that's why I make it pretty clear in my book that I never like to do religious provocation because, I'm basically commanding them in the name of God, in the name of Jesus, to reveal themselves to me. But they could do that 2-3 years down the road, and I've experienced that myself firsthand. Not too long ago, within the last 5 years. So, it is not good to communicate with or get the attention of these, these creatures because they have malevolent feelings towards you. They're not looking to help you; they're looking to destroy you. And when you become a threat to them, their eyes are on you. They want to stop you from doing what you're doing. And you have
Yeah,
to be in the right place spiritually, and emotionally to do that efficaciously. And these people don't understand that.
yeah,
So they
because when
create dangerous situations for other people.
when I've had conversations, because my YouTube channel is about various paranormal topics, urban legends, and it's also road trips. It's a variety of things, but it leans towards the urban legends and the paranormal. And the topic of Ouija boards comes up on a fairly regular basis. And I've told people, I said, you're adults, you can do what you want to do. The two things that stand out to me, first, how it's promoted. Modern day, they're promoted as a game, and that's one thing that I don't like because it's not a game. And two, what I usually tell people, I'm like, okay, you're an adult, you can make your choices, but here's the thing with using a Ouija board is that uh, you have no idea if not who, if what you're communicating with was ever human to begin with, you know. And I've had people just stop cold when I say it that way. They're like, you can see it, them thinking about it. Like, yeah, I mean, they're going to tell you whatever you want to hear. Okay. But they have ways of doing that. So
Well, you see,
that's,
I look at the Ouija board as being obsolete. When they have all of these technological advances like, spirit boxes that they have.
mhm.
I actually used them for the demon files. It's not something that I ever did. Actually, I didn't investigate in that manner. Uh, my investigations years ago didn't include communications. I wasn't interested in talking to the thing. I wasn't interested in it moving things around. I wanted it to go. That's all I wanted it to do. So it would be an interview and an exorcism, or maybe not an exorcism. So for that demon files, I had to do something, right? I had to fill it with something that would get the audience involved. And me talking for, all that time wouldn't have done it. So I had to incorporate and actually find investigators that were familiar and had these instruments like REM pods and spirit boxes and, whatever these guys were pulling out, the
Yeah, it's like
cameras. I never
there's
did this
something
stuff.
new every week. There's a new gadget every week to
And
talk
you
to
know what
them.
I have to say from my experience with them, they do work. We were getting information that was incredible what they consider a Class A EVP, the electronic voice phenomenon.
Hmm.
EVPs have been around for a long time. We use tape recorders for that. But the stuff that they have now, these technological marvels are picking up, and it's the amount of energy that it's pushing out, the frequency also. You need all of those things so these spirits can interact with the physical world through electromagnetic energy. That's how it's going to happen. And, we ask a question and you're getting a response. But what I noticed the most is that over a period of time, the tone and the voice was always the same. It didn't change. Like if it was just a freak thing, it would have been a different tone and a different voice every time it came through. That's not what I found. When I would get a direct answer to a direct question, the voice was always the same. It was if I was talking to the same person through this box that is not a transmitter. It's
And
a
what did that tell
receiver
you?
only.
What did that tell you? What was your instinct about
That
that?
I was indeed speaking with some type of spirit, an intelligent spirit.
So you're not anti-technology for the most part.
Well, no, oh no, I'm not. I'm not anti-science. I mean, the way I look at it, science proves the existence of God more than it disproves it. If you're looking at the evidence, you know, um, neutrally without having any preconceived notions, because look, I don't need science to prove God exists to me. So it's not like I'm willing that result. If it says no, it doesn't, I'm like, I dismiss it because my beliefs are my beliefs. I know what I believe in. I know what my faith is, and I believe in that. Um, I could not accept it anymore. In other words, I've accepted the truthness of my faith 1,000%. So when I look at science and like look at the evidence on the Shroud of Turin, look at the evidence that was found by um, I can't remember his name. He's a Protestant. He found what he believed to be Gomorrah, the biblical city of Gomorrah, by finding all of that sulfur, the brimstone. That's how it was destroyed, by fire and brimstone. He found evidence of that all over in this location, and also evidence of buildings that were large enough to fit into a city. So, the way I look at that, that's proving, the Old Testament to me. And there's an awful lot of stuff that's been coming out, and it jives with not only the Old Testament but the New Testament, and that is the litmus test. It has to fit both.
Okay. And I touched on it briefly at the beginning of the episode. The creative differences, you could say, that you had with the production company behind the Demon Files. I am aware of what happened. Could you share why you decided to part ways with them?
Well, I found this out not too long after we ended the three cases, that the network had approached the producer Eddie Bellini, who was an absolute dynamite guy, and told him that the network wanted me to stop praying. And he basically told him he's not going to do that, you know. And what had happened is the head of Destination America was a real big supporter of the Demon Files. He absolutely loved it. I met the man once. There was no doubt in my mind that I didn't have this man's 100% support. And in the filming and editing, he was replaced by somebody else that I don't even know who that person is. All I know is that a female took over. Never reached out to me, never spoke to me, never did nothing. All I knew is that they did not want to continue with the project. So I was like, that's fine, because it really wasn't what I wanted. It wasn't something that I want, the way I wanted my ministry to go. I was very happy when I was working with Bishop McKenna and working with Father Martin and some of the great priests that I've worked with over the years, and just handle it that way, instead of all of
without the fanfare.
external external sensationalism. And I basically told, well, the Discovery Channel owns Destination America, and I did tell the Discovery Channel to shove it, and I was walking away. I'm done. I'm finished. We're not doing it. And Eddie Bellini had asked me, could you just wait 3 days? And I'm like, okay, I'll give you 3 days. But in the meantime, I did Hostage to the Devil. Within that time frame, I was able to work on Hostage to the Devil, which I initially refused to do.
Really?
And something strange happened with that, but that's another story.
Yeah, I watched that a few months ago.
What's that?
I watched Hostage to the Devil a few months ago. I've been on a bit of a, I don't want to say exorcism kick, but I've been reading several books on exorcism in the past few months.
Try not to go too deep down that rabbit hole all at once.
Yeah, because I started with John Zaffis's book, and then in the appendix he recommended your book. And when I looked up your book, I'm like, oh, that's the guy from the movie, because that was a great movie. And then from there, what you recommended, that's when I found Father Martin's book, and then
that's what it works.
I'm sorry.
That's the way it works.
It's just from one to, it was like connecting one to the other, and what I found like a little unnerving were like, because you all have different styles, but you referenced some things that were very similar among the possessed people that you helped. One that kind of stood out to me is the unblinking eyes, or the eyes operating independently of like everything else. That was unsettling, because John Zaffis mentioned it. You mentioned it in your book, and I think briefly Father Martin did. So I'm like, okay. So these are guys that are on the ground. So this is that was a little unsettling to read.
What's even worse is when those eyes roll back in the heads and only the whites are showing. I was 12 years old when I went to see the movie The Exorcist. I was the same age as the character in the movie. So I never forgot that. And the thing that bothered me the most out of everything was when those eyes rolled back in her head. It wasn't the levitation. It wasn't the big extended lump in the throat. It wasn't the projectile vomit. It was those white eyes that just simply scared the hell out of me.
50 years later, that movie still holds up. And I think
there hasn't been one that has topped it, and I don't think there ever will be.
Yeah,
I mean, Emily Rose, it came close, but still, there are certain classics that are going to remain classics, and they're going to remain the best.
Yeah,
and that was The Exorcist was the best.
Yeah, when they re-released the director's cut in the theaters, this was many, many years ago, like maybe almost 20 years ago. They re-released it to the theaters. My sister went to go see it at the theaters, and I asked her, well, how was it? And she's like, I was asking God to forgive me for watching it while I was in the theater. I mean, it terrified her. So yeah, that movie, it's like, it's going to be untouchable. And actually, that kind of segues to a question I was going to ask you related to the Exorcist film, because they're trying to expand the Exorcist universe, what was established in the original film. And a few months ago, they just came out with a new movie as like kind of a continuation of what took place. They even brought back Linda Blair, reprising her role, and also the woman that played her mother. So they were both in the film. So, but the focus of the movie wasn't on them. I can't think of the name. I think it was Exorcist Believer is the most recent one. And they did it a little differently from most Exorcist films. In this one, it wasn't one person. It was two little girls that were possessed at the same time.
I heard about it.
Now, what I thought, their take on it, again, this is all Hollywood, but I thought it was an interesting take. and I wanted to ask if this was something you had heard of. Without giving away the whole movie, but basically when they were doing the exorcism, it wasn't one Catholic or two Catholic priests reciting the St. Michael prayer and the St. Benedict prayer. They had working together, like a Baptist minister, a Catholic priest, and also like a I don't want to say voodoo, maybe hoodoo, like Deep South practitioner. So they had three different faiths working in conjunction to exercise, and I'm like, okay, I can see from a Hollywood perspective, but I've never read of anything. I mean, would that be something that would even be considered?
No. Well, you got to understand. So, I mean, that's opening up a whole different can of worms. Actually, that is basically the ecumenism of the major religions in preparation for the one world religion. They can't bring about the one world religion if the Catholic Church is still separated from the Protestants and the Buddhists and everybody else. It's also where the Antichrist wants to plant his butt on the seat of St. Peter. He doesn't want the mantle of the presidency. He doesn't want to be a prime minister. He doesn't want to be a king. He wants to be the ruler in Rome. He wants to be God's replacement. So he's not shooting little. He's shooting big. So they're pushing this. All religions are the same, which they're not, according to my faith. There's only one truth. You can't have a whole bunch of different truths. You got 50,000 different Protestant sects. They all preach different gospels. The Catholic Church preaches the same gospel. The interpretations are the same. But I don't want to get off track here. You would not have that type of thing, with the exception of, I don't know. Do you know who M. Scott Peck is?
Yes, I have done my research. For those listening who may not be familiar, he is. Give me one moment here. He is he passed away a few years ago, from what I understand.
Yes.
He is a psychiatrist and also a best-selling author. He wrote in
He's a
1978.
minister.
I'm sorry?
He's a Protestant deliverance minister.
Right. And he's most well known for the book he wrote in 1978, The Road Less Traveled, where he's a trained psychiatrist. And what made his book unique, from what I understand, is it combined his experience in his private psychiatric care as well as his deeply religious beliefs. He combined them, and that made it quite a minister. Right. And his book.
So the reason why I mentioned them is I received a phone call from Father Ramakumaraswamy to meet him in Connecticut. They were going to go out on a case. So I went, I met him, and I followed him to this big, beautiful, absolutely gorgeous house. And when I followed him on my car and got out, he said, "We're meeting Bishop McKenna here." I says, "Whose house is this?" He said, "It's M. Scott Peck's house." So I'm like, I knew who he was. So I'm like, wow, I know who you're speaking about. So we went inside, and actually what had transpired was it was two of M. Scott Peck's congregation. It was a husband and wife. And he felt that they were being oppressed. So he tried to help them, but he wasn't able to bring the case to fruition. So he reached out to Bishop McKenna, and they were friends. M. Scott Peck also was friends with Father Martin, even though he did, sometimes speak out of term. And he decided he needed help from the Catholic Church with these parishioners, and we were there to.
It's a bold move.
To read what's that?
That's a Protestant minister, I believe, reaching out to the Catholic Church.
I don't think he really cared. He was more interested in helping the people than worrying about what Joe Blow is going to say over there in the assembly hall. It didn't mean anything. We were there for a higher purpose, not to try to make people sensible. But you know, that's what took place. You know, they were helped. He asked for help and he received help. That's what we're supposed to do. But we're not supposed to sacrifice our faith to do that. We are to stand firm on our faith, and that's what I do as a traditional Catholic. I'm standing firm on my faith. I'm immutable. You're not going to move me from it.
Now,
You don't seem convinced, Eric.
oh no, I know. Like I said, I've read your
So
book.
like,
I've seen your
yeah, okay,
interviews.
well,
Yeah.
you know.